Really excited to introduce Sonora Reyes, author of the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, which is just a really spectacular queer Latinx story. I adored it.
Thank
And
you.
you're currently a finalist for the National Book Award, right?
So yeah, I get to go
Congratulations,
to,
best of luck,
thank you.
etc.
Yeah.
And they
What?
are here to talk to us
Oh,
about writing, publication, etc.
yay. Yeah, I'm so excited. We find out, I think it's on Tuesday or Wednesday. I'm not really sure when the ceremony is, when I should really know, but I don't. But yeah, so I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has for me, or I could just go and do my little spiel.
Sure. So, Nora, why don't you go ahead and introduce folks to kind of your writing journey? How did you first start off with your novel? Like, what was your inspiration and what was your motivation to keep writing? I think that most of us who are doing NaNoWriMo right now are getting to our second week wall, as it were. So,
Mhm.
it'd be nice to hear some success stories from that end.
Yeah. So when I first did NaNoWriMo, my first year was the year that I wrote the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. It was in 2018. And all my ideas were like way out there, like super fantasy or sci-fi or speculative or whatever. And I decided on October like 28th or 26th or something like that, like somewhere really close to November, that I was going to write a book. And I only had these super like big ideas that needed more than 3 days to flesh out. And so I ended up deciding to write the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School because I was like, well, I need to write about something that I know really intimately that I can like talk about for 50,000 words, like, which could very well be like a speculative thing, but I didn't have anything plotted out. I didn't have any pre-work done. So I was like, what's something that I can just kind of bleh onto the page? At least for a first draft, you know? So I kind of, that's how I came up with the idea for it, because I was like, well, I have Catholic school trauma. Let's process that. Um, so I kind of decided to write about something that I knew really well, like really intimately, that I could just talk about without having to research, without having to come up with like world building or anything like that. After that year, I did write a high fantasy for NaNoWriMo, and that was very different for me because um I had to do the work before the month started to like really get into it. Because I'm an outliner, I can't pants to save my life. I cannot do it. I've tried. I tried pantsing a rom-com once and it turned into a murder mystery. Um
I hate it when your characters take hold of whatever plot ideas you had and just run away with them. It's like, no, that's not
yeah,
what I need to do.
yeah, it is wild. So like now I have to plot everything out or I will just go off the deep end. People who can pants, I commend you. It is a superpower that I do not have. Um, but yeah, so I around the 2 week mark, like right before the 2 week mark, I actually lost a lot of my progress because my Word file got corrupted. Um Yeah, so my Word file got corrupted and my last save had been like 50 pages ago.
Oh,
So I lost like 50 pages of work halfway through. And I was actually super ahead at the time. And I lost 50 pages and I was so mad because I couldn't get it recovered to like no matter what. Like I took it to the Apple store, I took it to like electronic stores. I took my computer everywhere to try to get that Word file uncorrupted, but nobody could do it, and so I had to rewrite the 50 pages and the rest of the book. And basically I just like gave myself a day off from it because I was like, I need to not think about this book right now because I'm so mad. And it was like the most emotionally charged scene of the book too. Like it was really hard to write. Like the whole time I was writing it, I was like, oh my God, this is so difficult, like I'm suffering. And then I lost it. um
oh no.
so yeah, it was rough. But then I took a day off from it, and then I came back and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. If I don't finish this book, like right now, I'm gonna be mad. So I like wrote the 50 pages. I ended up finishing the book in that next 24 hours because I was so I did it out of pure spite. Like out of pure spite, I wrote that book. I don't know how I did it, and I've never been able to write that much in a day, like ever after that. But that day, it was like I started writing at like 4 a.m. and finished writing at 2 a.m. And everyone thought that I was like super high because I was like, my eyes were all red and I was taking forever to respond to questions. Someone would say like, "Hey, Sonia," and I would be like, yeah, what? And I would just like not, I was so out of it, like so out of it. But I did it. The subsequent years have not been quite as trying as that first year. But yeah, usually around the halfway point, I just have to like really bring myself to like body double a lot. Like that is my main way that I get motivated, is by body doubling and by having somebody else there, even if they're not working on the same exact thing as me. Like if they're not doing NaNoWriMo, like maybe my sister has homework to do, and so I'll go over to her house while she does her homework and I'll write or something, so we're both being productive. That helps me a lot when I'm like in a slump and don't want to write, or even getting on Zoom with someone and doing it online virtually. So I like doing that a lot too. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that a lot of the people on this call and a lot of the people on the team who couldn't make it today definitely resonate with losing a bunch of their work at once, because we've all drafted pieces. And I don't know for anyone else, but I lost like a third of my code, like literally the week before my defense.
Yeah. Oh, so no.
I fortunately managed to get it back because I backed it up somewhere else.
Oh, good.
Sheer panic at 12 o'clock in the
morning. Oh, yeah. That's rough. Oh man.
Yeah. So yes, we understand the side of the cell.
And yeah, good. And so after you miraculously finished this sucker out of spite, so what was your after November journey with the novel?
The after November journey? With this book specifically, I did not take my time. I like really was ready to like go out with it. So I finished it on November 16th. And then I took the next 2 weeks of November to revise it. Like a really quick, make sure it's readable revision. And then I sent it out to beta readers. I sent it out to like 50 people. I sent it because I was on Tumblr at the time, and I was just like, who wants to read this book about a gay girl going to Catholic school? And like I sent it to every single person that responded, which was not a good idea. I would not recommend doing that because there's way too much feedback. But I got like 12 pieces of feedback by halfway through December. So I revised it again halfway through December. And I brought it from 53,000 words to 65,000 words, which is a much more usable first draft to send to like agents and stuff. So then I felt like I was ready to query, even though I probably shouldn't have so fast. But I started querying on December 31st, which was really soon.
So Sonora, if I could ask you to take one quick step back.
Oh, yeah.
Most of the people on this call have never gone through the publishing process at all. So could you walk us through, what do you mean by like querying? What does an edit of a draft look like? Like literally first time for us, so we'd appreciate that.
Of course. Yeah, no problem. Sorry. Yeah, so for me, the first revision was really quick. It was not a full revision and I didn't change a lot. It was just, I'm reading through this and making sure that it's readable and making sure I don't have any notes to myself in there. And then my second revision was I incorporated all the feedback that I had gotten from my beta readers, and I added a lot of new stuff, and I like changed some character stuff. I moved things around to try to like incorporate that feedback into my revision. And then so yeah, in traditional publishing, in order to get published with a major publisher, most people have to get a literary agent. Which is someone who will shop your book around to publishers to try to get them to buy your book so that they can sell your book, or buy the rights to your book, I should say. So you have to query meaning like send out a query letter to like a bunch of different literary agents who you think might want to represent you. And then if you'll get like rejections or offer of representation, or they never respond. Some people just never respond. But yeah, so I started querying on December 31st. And I did not have a smart process with querying because I had never done it before. So I just queried literally everybody. Like I found on Query Tracker, every single agency on Query Tracker, I queried one agent from every single agency. So I queried a lot of agents.
Wow.
And that was a bad idea because not every agent is a good agent, not every agency is a good agency. So I got really, really lucky because I ended up with 4 offers of representation. And looking back on those 4 offers, 2 of them were from agents who probably never would have been able to sell my book. So I'm like, I got really lucky that I ended up getting 4 offers because then I could have picked from them and picked somebody who like could sell my book, who had like was with a good agency and everything. So I highly recommend doing your research on agencies and their sales before querying someone from that agency. So you don't necessarily have to query someone who like an agent who has 1 million sales on their record, especially a newer agent. My agent, when I signed with her, was brand new. She had no sales on her record, but she was from Writer's House, which is a very reputable agency. So if the agency is good, then you can probably trust the agent. But I would not query like certain agencies anymore. Like if I were to query now, there's a lot of agencies I just like wouldn't even bother querying because they don't have like good sales or anything like that. So
yeah. What does a query typically look like? Like, do you literally just send your book out into the ether and pray, or like what does that process look like?
Yeah, so most agents have submission guidelines that they want you to follow when you send out a query letter. So a query letter is going to be usually like between 250 to 300 words of a pitch with your personalization in the beginning and an author bio at the end. So it could be like, Dear Alexandra Levick, that's my agent. Dear Alexandra Levick, I am querying you today because I saw you post on Twitter about wanting more queer Latina books, right? That's my book. So there's your personalization. And then you say, so I thought you would be a great fit. The Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School is a young adult contemporary novel complete at 100,000 words or however many words it is. So you have like your metadata right there. And then you go into the pitch. Yamilet is a 17-year-old, blah, 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 blah. You go a couple paragraphs of that. And then your author bio. I am Sonora Reyes. I am the author of the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. Blah, blah, blah. You won't say that because they know you're the author of the book that you're querying, but you would give your little, like, if you have any publications, if you have a degree, if you have any relevant experience that makes your book relevant to you. So like, oh, I went to Catholic school and I wrote this Catholic school book. So, like stuff like that you would put in your author bio. And then usually some agents will ask for a query letter, a synopsis, and the first 10 pages. Some will ask for just the query letter, first 50 pages, first 25 pages, first 30 pages, first chapter, first 10 chapters. Like it's all over the place. It just depends on the agent. So you have to look at their submission guidelines and then follow those guidelines. And a lot of agents I've heard will just reject you if you don't follow the guidelines. So if you send them like way more than they ask for, or if you don't have like the right like you didn't include a synopsis or anything like that, they'll just reject it.
I mean, they're busy, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're so busy. So they've got a lot of queries coming in, and that's the work that they do that doesn't get paid. So that's their bottom of their priorities. So it's really good to give yourself your best chance by following all of those guidelines. Yeah.
So once you have queried, you've found the literary agent of your dreams, what happens after that?
I mean, I can mention here briefly, I think the best analogy is AAAS's placement process. It's really like the agent does the footwork, but it's really dependent on you. But so, take it away.
Yeah. So after the agent, usually you'll revise your book with your agent for a little bit. So they might do 1 round of revision. Me and my agent did 6 rounds of revision. It took us about a year to do all of that revision. And so it really just depends on the agent, how editorial they are. My agent is extremely editorial. There are very few agents who are as editorial as she is. So you probably won't revise for a year before going out on submission. I did. Um, and I don't think my experience is super common, because I have talked to like other people. They're like, oh, I revised for 3 months, or I revised for 3 weeks, or whatever. They did 1 quick round of revision and then sent it out. But usually your agent will send you what's called an edit letter. That is just a letter detailing all of the revisions that they want you to do. For my agent, usually I would get my edit letter, and then we would get on a phone call to talk about it, and we would brainstorm about how to solve some of the problems, or we would talk about, oh, I didn't really like this idea that you gave. What about this instead? Like, instead of doing that, could we do this? Or you can kind of like talk about it and meet in the middle somewhere if you're not feeling it. And then, I mean, hopefully you can, if you have an understanding agent. But of course you don't want to push back on everything. Like, you do want to make your book, like, your book can always be better. So it's always good to take edits with grace. But of course it's your book. So if there's anything that you're not really vibing with, you can always push back on it and let them know. In my experience, the best way to do it is to offer an alternative solution. So usually if they give you an idea, like my agent will give me an idea, like, I think that this character isn't 3-dimensional enough. What if you give them this characteristic? Or what if you give a scene where we do this? And I'm like, oh, I don't really like that for them, but what if we give them this characteristic instead? And then usually it's fine, because you're still addressing the problem. So then once you're done with all the edits that your agent wants you to do, then your agent can say, okay, we're ready to go out on submission with this. And submission just means that you're sending it to editors at like different publishers. So each publisher has editors who are like, they're called acquiring editors. And it's their job to make book deals and to give out book deals and buy books. So they're the ones who are going to be saying, yes, we want to publish this book and we're going to pay you this much money to do it. Or they're going to be telling you that they're going to pass. So submission is this big, like, it's like query 2.0. And it's like a lot of people hate it because you can't talk about it as much, because you're not supposed to say when you get a book deal until it's announced.
Oh,
so
wow.
people are gonna yeah. So for me, I got my book deal in April of 2020. I didn't get to announce it until March of 2021. So it was almost a year of not letting anyone know that I had this book deal. Like, everyone just like
peak pandemic.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was rough. It was so hard to keep it a secret. But yeah, I told my mom, and my mom like immediately texted the whole group chat, and I was like, you can't do that. It's secret. So I made a mistake. But yeah, so what that process looks like is the agent sends it out, and usually the agent will ask you, the author, how you want to receive your feedback, or maybe some agents have different ways that they give you the information. So some people will get every rejection as it comes in. Some people will, like for me, I ask to get my news on Fridays, so that if I get any rejections, I'll know on Friday, and then I can treat myself to a nice dinner or something, so that I can like decompress from the rejection. Or if it's good news, I can celebrate.
That's
So I have my Fridays for that. And then Some people will just tell you if you get good news and not tell you about the rejections at all. And so it really just depends on your agent and what you want to hear. I know my agent wanted to only tell me good news and not tell me any bad news at all unless it was actionable, like unless they gave feedback that like, oh, we should probably revise that. But I wanted to know everything, but I just wanted to know on so yeah. And then once you get an offer, and this is the same for agents. I didn't really explain this, but for agents, once you get one offer, you're supposed to email everybody who you've sent your query to and let them know, I have an offer of representation. If you would also like to offer me representation, could you let me know by this date so that I can make my decision? And then other agents will either give you an offer or they will reject it at that point. So usually it's like very silent and you'll get like a rejection here and there and a rejection here and there until you get your first offer. And then it's like rejection, 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 rejection. And it's like, because they're all, so it's like, once you get your first offer, it's like, yes, you have an offer, but you're going to get a lot more rejections now too.
Sounds like you need very, very thick skin to be a successful author.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And then it's the same thing with submission. So once you get an offer, you tell all the editors that have your query, or you don't do it, your agent does it, but they're going to tell everyone who has your submission package, we received an offer, there's interest, and we are going to make our decision by this day. So if you also want to submit an offer for this book, let us know so that we can proceed. And usually what will happen if multiple editors want to buy the book, it's there's two ways that they can do it. So the first way is if the first editor hears that there's going to be interest, so the first person to give you an offer. I'm sorry, is my Discord being super loud? I can exit out of it.
Exit. No, that's all right.
Okay, sorry about that.
We're using a friend's computer, so I was like, what does that sound?
Oh, sorry, it's totally mine. But yeah, so once you get your first offer, that editor, if they think that you're going to get other offers, they can submit an offer as a preempt, which means you can't go to auction. You can't say to other editors that you can't give any other editors the chance to buy it. You have to go with this offer or say no. And a preempt is usually a really good deal. So usually that they'll say it's a preempt. And if you get a preempt, usually you're like, oh my God, they really want this. But then it's kind of a chance you're taking because you can't go to auction, which is the second option. If you have multiple editors involved and it's not a preempt, then you have an auction day, which for me, that's what I did. I went to auction, and there's auction day where each editor who wanted to buy the book put in their offers. They emailed it to my agent. And before that day, I had gotten on a phone call with every editor who was interested so that I could get like the general vibe of the person and ask them any questions I wanted to ask. But then auction day was when they would tell me how much they wanted to offer me for the book, like how much money they wanted to give me. And that was basically what I made my decision based off. But you can make your decision off the phone call if you like really liked somebody, even if they're not offering you as much as somebody else. You don't have to make the decision based on money. I did. Yeah. So that is what an auction looks like. Usually most books will just get bought by one editor, and like, because editors are so busy, they're not always going to like have time to read in those 2 weeks. So if nobody has time to read in those 2 weeks, then that's still great news because you have a book deal. So yeah.
Awesome. So I want to make sure we leave time for questions. So in terms of etiquette, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please go ahead and unmute yourself and turn on your camera so that we can see your beautiful smiling faces. And Charlotte and Maddie, if you have questions you'd like to ask, we have 2 other people over here, but if you'd like to say something, feel free to. So would anyone else like to ask any questions?
And while people are gathering their thoughts, Sunny, if you have anything further you'd like to talk about the project, what you love about this, any other things that you think we should know as aspiring writers or people interested in writing.
Yeah, like sorry, about the project as in the Lesbiana's Guide?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So for anyone who doesn't know, the title is pretty self-explanatory. It's about a lesbian girl going to Catholic school. She gets sent there with her brother because her brother's been getting into fights at their old school, and she decides she's going to follow him to Catholic school so she can keep him out of trouble. But secretly, it's because she just got outed and rejected by her crush / ex-best friend at their old school, and she wants a fresh start too. So they go to Catholic school and she vows never to fall in love again. Yeah. And that may or may not fail for her. Yeah, so that's Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School. I do have a second book coming out in May. It's called the Luis Ortega Survival Club, and it is a revenge book.
Nice.
Yeah. So
I got lucky enough to read it. I think at one point when you were revising it, and I remember spending like all of that night just howling with laughter as I read it. So
oh my god, yeah. Like how long ago did you read it? Was it like one of the early revisions?
2020. Like I was
okay. Oh my god,
really
it is
miserable
so
and
different
like,
now.
Yeah.
I revised it so much from there because so for anyone who knows me, you know that I super underwrite my first draft. So the first draft of the Luis Ortega Survival Club was 23,000 words.
Wow.
So it was not a book. It was not a book.
It's like a novella.
A glorified outline. And I doubled that size, and then I doubled it again. So now it's like 80,000 words or something. So yeah.
Wow.
My first drafts are super short.
Yeah.
I'm just
I feel
getting
like I have the opposite problem. I spend most of my time in editing trying to cut down my verbose, like florid prose as I'm writing. So it's nice meeting someone who has the opposite problem.
Yeah, I have definitely the opposite problem.
Anyone else with questions? I don't want to hog the whole time. I'll also just note you do a lot of stuff with really cool neurodiversity in your books. And would you like to talk about that at all? Like, I know I'm super excited when I read them because ADHD.
Oh, that's okay. Let's start there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I tried to kind of like sprinkle things in with different characters. The Lesbiana's Guide, I did kind of feel like I had to limit a little bit because I was like, okay, so we've got she's gay, she's indigenous, she's going to a Catholic school, it's like a religious background, and also I'm autistic, and I think I accidentally made her autistic, even though it doesn't say it on the page. But a lot of people have come to me being like, is Yami autistic? And I'm like, you know what? Yes, she is. Okay. But like Cesar also has like mental health stuff going on. And then in the Luis Ortega Survival Club, I did make the main character canonically autistic. So yeah. I have a lot of autistic protagonists in future books coming out. So yeah.
I was curious how much writing you were doing when you started this piece. Like, were you writing regularly? Did you do any sort of like exercises that helped you get thoughts on paper?
Yeah, like when I started what?
When you started writing the Lesbiana's Guide to Catholic School, were you writing on a regular basis already?
Yeah, so I wrote a lot of fan fiction. So before the Lesbiana's Guide, I had only ever written fan fiction. I had never written a whole original novel. But I did write a lot of fan fiction. I posted a chapter every few days. So like 2,000 words or so in each chapter, maybe more, maybe less, every couple of days. So I was writing regularly, but it wasn't necessarily like a nano pace. like NaNoWriMo. But it was like I was writing a lot of fan fiction. And I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah. Admittedly, like I definitely do that a lot too. It's what got me through writing my dissertation, honestly.
Yeah. Honestly, fan fiction is so nice, and like it's good to like get your writing juices flowing if you like want to work on something that's not without the pressure, you know. Especially if you're trying for like traditional publishing, like just working on something like outside of what you're trying to like get published, it can be kind of nice to like get out of your head for a little bit and just write for fun. Yeah.
So as someone who has trouble keeping my thoughts in order, let's just put that mildly, are there any tools, either digital or analog, that you like to use as you're going through your writes and your rewrites of larger works like novels?
Yeah, I actually use Google Docs to organize my edits. I don't use it to write my actual work. So like I write in Word, but I use Google Docs where I put my edit letter in there, and then I will have like a revision folder where I'll say like, okay, here's my edit letter, and then another doc where it's like, here are all the things that I'm going to do. So I like kind of put into bullet points the edit letter, because the edit letter is written in like paragraph form. So I'll put it into bullet points, and then I will order those from like, sometimes my process changes with each book usually, and depending on each letter, like every edit letter is different. So depending on like what I think is going to be easiest for me, I'll either make every bullet point and then rearrange them in terms of like what comes first in the story to what comes last, or I'll rearrange them from what is easiest to do to what is hardest to do. So that if I'm feeling like, oh, I can't do that much right now, but I want to get something done, I'll do something on the easy part. If I'm feeling really motivated, I'll do something on the hard part. So usually I have like easy edits, hard edits, and then these are ordered from beginning to end, and these are ordered from beginning to end. Like that's the ideal way that I would do it. And then that way I can just sort of read my book from beginning to end. And like when I run across one of the edits, I will do it.
Yeah. So the only the issue I've run into trying to do it chronologically is occasionally I'll write down something that completely changes the order of my book. And so when I'm doing the easy edits, I'll go through, make all the changes, and then I move a scene, and it's like, oh no. Oh dear.
So what I do when it's stuff like that will change the order of things, I usually will have, so I'll do easy edits and hard edits, and I won't worry about the order. And then I will do the things that change the order first. So I will be like, okay, what is going to change this book fundamentally? And like that I can't really do anything else without doing that, you know? So if I'm going to rearrange like the whole first act, I'm going to need to do that before I go through the first act and like add things here and there. So I'll rearrange it first, and then I'll read it from the beginning and do that. So anything that needs rearranging, that comes first for me, usually. I mean, my process does change a lot, but that's usually in an ideal world what I would do.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, I don't want to take too much of your time. We told folks, because we were originally going to be using my Zoom, which is a personal Zoom account, that we'd be going for half an hour. And so I want to make sure that we're respectful of people's time. Any last questions before we let Sonora off the line? Great.
And oh yeah, and any final things you'd like to say?
Man, just like, you know, you can do it. Yeah, and just like, oh, the basic piece of advice that I give everybody when it comes to NaNoWriMo or writing advice or anything like that is always to take every piece of advice with a grain of sand or a grain of salt, whatever the saying is. To not be discouraged if that advice doesn't work for you. Because not every piece of advice is for everybody. Most advice is for neurotypical people. Most advice is, you know, with a very specific person in mind. So if it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean that you're a bad writer or that you can't do it. It just means you need to find what does work for you. So
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to our group. I have to do the obligatory pitch at the end. So for folks who can't make it, this will be recorded and put online on our YouTube page. The STEAM team does a fantastic job of hosting almost all of our webinars on that YouTube page, unless they contain sensitive information. So please go and like and subscribe it, because it helps us get more eyes on our site. Well, thank you so much.